Good morning, everyone. Today the topic is microcirculation and lymphatics. So this is the topic from cardiovascular system and the chapter is regional circulation. Okay. So in regional circulation, the first topic is micro or capillary circulation. Okay. And also we will be seeing the lymphatic circulation. So both these we will cover in today's class. So microcirculation is a meshwork of vessels which are less than 10 micrometers in diameter, which includes small arterioles, meta-arterioles, capillaries and post-capillary venules and arteriovenous shunts. So as we all know, from the heart the aorta arises and the vena cava returns the blood to the heart. So these are the larger vessels. Okay, from the larger vessels there is branching of the vessels like small arterioles from artery side and venules, post capillary venules from the venous side, and the arterioles will be dividing into meta arterioles and finally the capillaries and the post capillary venules and the venules and vena cava, or the veins and the vena cava. Okay, so the circulation which is taking place in these smaller vessels, that is small arterioles, meta arterioles and then capillaries, post capillary venules, these very small diameter vessels, that is less than 10 micrometer diameter. So in these vessels how the circulation is taking place, so that we will be seeing in today's class. So this is one more picture of the microcirculation or the vessels, showing the artery, the cross section of the artery and then the capillaries. Okay, so meta arterioles and capillaries, post capillary venules, and here the cross section of the vein and the cross section of the capillary. So arterioles are the branches of small arteries, ultimately after some divisions give rise to arterioles. Okay, so the arterioles are the branches of small arteries which ultimately after some divisions give rise to these arterioles, which are 30 to 50 micrometers in diameter, and these are the resistance vessels. That means they provide resistance to the blood flow. And meta arterioles, so the arterioles divide into smaller vessels lined by muscle coat which further give rise to capillaries. The precapillary sphincter is present before branching. So the arterioles divide into smaller vessels lined by muscle coat. Okay, so this will be further giving rise to capillaries. So after the arterioles, from the small arteries, the arterioles arise, and from the arterioles, meta-arterioles will divide, which finally give rise to capillaries. So from the meta-arterioles, while dividing into capillaries, there is precapillary sphincter is present. Okay, you can see here the arteriole. This is the branch of small artery. So arteriole dividing into meta-arteriole, and then the precapillary sphincter before dividing into capillaries. So these are the branches, arterial capillaries, and these are venous capillaries. So the capillaries arise directly from the arterioles or meta-arterioles, and they allow easy exchange of gases and nutritive substances across them, and so are called exchange vessels. Okay, so remember this word, exchange vessels. Why? Because they allow easy exchange of gases and nutritive substances across them. Okay, and the most important segment of the circulatory system is this capillaries. The precapillary sphincter is present before branching. So this is a picture showing the capillary structure and the transport across the capillary. So the capillaries are three different types are present. So we will see in the coming slide the types. So here the transport, how does it occur? They are containing pores, and lipid soluble substances pass through the endothelial cells, and small water soluble substances pass through the pores, and exchangeable proteins are moved across by vesicular transport. Okay, so endocytosis, exocytosis, and the plasma proteins are present, so they generally cannot cross the capillary wall. Okay, so these are the endothelial cells and the transport of various substances through the capillaries. So this is again one more picture showing the microcirculation or capillary circulation. So this is arterial side and this is venous side. Precapillary sphincters can close off capillaries in response to local signals. Okay, so this is one of the important feature of capillary circulation. So these sphincters can close off capillaries in response to local signals. Okay, so what is that signal? We will see in the coming different regional circulations like coronary, cerebral, and splanchnic circulation, muscle circulation. So in all those, you will be able to observe the importance of this precapillary sphincter. Okay, so what is its function? When the precapillary sphincters are relaxed, blood flows through all the capillaries in the blood. So you can observe here, the blood is flowing through all the vessels. That is all the capillaries in the bed. Bed means like this meshwork is arrangement is there, no? That we call it as capillary bed. So these are present in various organs, that is in particular region, suppose heart, coronary circulation, and brain, cerebral circulation. So in those regions, the capillary beds are present. So when the precapillary sphincters are relaxed, the blood flows through all the capillaries. And in other case, when the precapillary sphincters are constricted, the blood flow bypasses the capillaries completely and flows only through the meta-arterioles. Okay, you can see there is no blood here. Okay, so this is this point is important in controlling or regulating the blood flow to that particular region or organ. Okay, so when the sphincters are constricted, the blood flow will be bypassing the capillaries, and when the sphincters are relaxed, the blood flow will be seen in all the capillaries. Okay, and the postcapillary venules measure 20 to 60 micrometers in diameter and are the most permeable part of the microcirculation. Okay, so you have to remember this. The most permeable part of the capillaries or microcirculation is postcapillary venules. So active and inactive capillaries, where they are present. So in resting tissues, there are inactive capillaries because the cell or tissue is resting. There is no need of blood flowing through the capillaries. Okay, so most of the capillaries are collapsed. Okay, that is inactive, and blood bypasses them to flow through the thoroughfares. So these thoroughfare vessels are arteriovenous anastomosis. Directly the link will be, or the vessels will be connecting the arteries, arterioles and venules. So these are the shunts or AV anastomosis. So this is present in inactive, the resting tissues. And in active tissues, what happens means meta-arterioles and precapillary sphincters dilate and blood flows through all the capillaries. Because the tissue is active, it is working, it needs more blood flow. So that's why all the capillaries are active. So the precapillary sphincters are controlled by local metabolites and vasodilators, and innervation is sympathetic. So this picture shows the single capillary which is having arterial end and venous end, and this is the interstitial fluid, and these are the tissue cells. So these cells are any cells. So in each and every system, in each and every organ, there are cells. The tissues are made up of cells. Okay. So the capillary from the arterial end, the water, glucose, amino acids and oxygen will enter into the tissue cells, and from the into the venous end, the waste substances, the carbon dioxide, water will be entering into the venous end of capillary. So this is the basic system or basic thing which takes place each and every minute, second in our body, in each and every cell. So from the arterial end we get oxygen, and into the venous end we release the carbon dioxide and waste. So this thing operates in at the cellular level. So from the capillaries only the oxygen enters into the cells, and from the cells the CO2 enters into the venous end of the capillary. So the arteriovenous anastomosis, or otherwise called shunt or thoroughfare vessels. So these are short, low resistance connections between the arterioles and venules bypassing the capillaries. So these are present in resting tissues. So abundantly innervated by the vasomotor sympathetic fibers. Coming to the structural characteristics of the capillaries, the average diameter is of 5 micrometers and length is of 50 micrometers. Wall thickness is 1 micrometers. Cross-sectional area is 40 micrometers square. And endothelial cells, basal, lamina, branching perivascular cells or pericytes are present. And primary function of circulation is to transport nutrients to the tissues and remove waste products, which we have seen in the previous slide. So this is the primary function of the capillary circulation or micros. Coming to the types of capillaries, there are three types: continuous, fenestrated and sinusoid type of capillaries. So in continuous, there is no gap or no pores, nothing. The endothelial cells form a continuous tube except for some intercellular clefts. So these type of vessels are found in brain, lungs, skeletal and smooth muscles. Okay, so in this picture you can see there are no gaps. So only the basement membrane, endothelial cells, lumen and clefts. So these lines are the intercellular clefts. And next type is fenestrated or windowed. Here you can see in the picture the fenestrations or pores are present in the endothelial cells. The plasma membrane has fenestrations. These type of capillaries are found in kidneys, villi of small intestine, choroid plexus in brain and endocrine glands. And next type is sinusoid type of capillaries. So here there are more wider pores are present which allow more winding, and that is movement of substances, and large fenestrations. Incomplete basement membrane is seen. Protein and RBCs can pass. So this is the main feature of the sinusoid capillaries. These are found in red bone marrow, liver, spleen and anterior pituitary, because liver, spleen, red bone marrow, they are mainly concerned with RBCs and proteins. So this is one more picture showing the continuous, fenestrated and sinusoidal or discontinuous type of capillaries. So continuous is very tight type and discontinuous or sinusoidal is leaky type of capillaries. So how does the exchange of substances takes place in the capillaries? So that is otherwise called transcapillary exchange. So the exchange of substances occurs primarily in the capillaries and postcapillary venules. The major mechanisms of exchange are diffusion and filtration. So in the transport of substances across the cell membrane, that is in the general physiology, you have learnt about all these topics, that is diffusion, filtration or bulk flow, osmosis, active transport, secondary active, and then you have seen vesicular transport. So like that, here the main mechanism of exchange of substances occurs through diffusion and filtration. Some substances also pass through the cells by the vesicular transport. So the fluid in the capillaries, how it is filtrated. The hydrostatic pressure in capillaries tend to force fluid and its dissolved substances through the capillary pores into the interstitial spaces. So this is the main drawing pressure, that is hydrostatic pressure, which forces the substances into the interstitial spaces. And one more pressure is there, that is osmotic pressure caused by the plasma proteins, called colloid osmotic pressure, tends to cause fluid movement by osmosis from the interstitial spaces into the blood. Okay, so this osmotic pressure, which is caused by the plasma proteins, it draws the fluid into the capillary. Okay, so these are the two main determining pressures which regulate the filtration process in the capillaries. So this osmotic pressure exerted by the plasma protein normally prevents significant loss of fluid volume from the blood into the interstitial space. And the lymphatic system returns to the circulation the small amounts of excess protein and fluid that leak from the blood into the interstitial spaces. So that's why we are combining the microcirculation and lymphatic system. Whatever the fluid which is leaked from the circulation into the spaces is returned back to the circulation. Okay, the small amount of excess protein and fluid, so that is returned back to circulation through lymphatic system. Okay. So the pressures, capillary hydrostatic pressure and the osmotic pressures which we have seen now are nothing but the Starling forces, which are the driving forces behind the transport or the exchange of substances between the capillary and the interstitial spaces. So that there are four Starling forces. First one is capillary hydrostatic pressure, which tends to force fluid out through the capillary membrane into the interstitial space. And the next is interstitial fluid pressure, which tends to force fluid inward through the capillary membrane when the fluid pressure is positive, but outward when it is negative. Okay, and capillary colloid osmotic pressure. This pressure tends to cause osmosis of fluid inward. So capillary is having two pressures. One is hydrostatic and other is osmotic. Hydrostatic tends to force the fluid outward, and colloid osmotic tends to force the fluid inward or suck the fluid inward. And then interstitial fluid is also having two pressures. One is hydrostatic, one is osmotic. So hydrostatic, when it is positive, it forces the fluid inward, and when it is negative, it forces the fluid outward. The osmotic, interstitial osmotic fluid pressure, it tends to cause osmosis of fluid outward through the capillary membrane. Okay, it draws the fluid into the interstitial space. So remember the names and what is their action. So if the sum of these four forces, that is the net filtration pressure, if it is positive, there will be a net fluid filtration across the capillaries. And if the sum of these forces is negative, there will be a net fluid absorption from the spaces into the capillaries. So depending upon the net filtration pressure, whether it is positive or negative, there will be a fluid filtration or fluid absorption respectively across the capillaries, that is filtration, which takes place where the fluid will be filtered from the capillaries, and absorption means the fluid is absorbed from the interstitial space into the capillaries. So the net filtration pressure is calculated as like this. So NFP is equal to PC, that is capillary hydrostatic, and pi IF, that is interstitial fluid oncotic pressure, subtracted from the interstitial fluid hydrostatic, and this is capillary oncotic pressure. So these two are positive and these two are from these, this will be subtracted. So the rate of fluid filtration in a tissue is also determined by number and size of pores in each capillary, as well as the number of capillaries in which blood is flowing. So the fluid filtration, apart from these forces, it is also determined by the number and size of pores in each capillary, and also the number of capillaries in which the blood is flowing. So these factors are usually expressed together as capillary filtration coefficient. So if this Kf is there, the Kf is therefore a measure of capacity of capillary membrane to filter water for a given net filtration pressure, and is usually expressed as ml per minute per mmHg net filtration pressure. So the rate of capillary fluid filtration is therefore determined as Kf multiplied by NFP, that is net filtration pressure. So this, because this filtration coefficient also plays very important role, the total filtration is equal to this filtration coefficient multiplied by the net filtration pressure. So this is the picture showing the net filtration pressure, that is net filtration. If it is positive, there will be filtration, and net filtration if it is negative, there will be absorption. So here you can see the Starling forces, larger hydrostatic and smaller osmotic. So there is positive, so filtration taking place. And here the hydrostatic is smaller and osmotic is larger. So there will be negative movement, a negative NFP. So there will be absorption. The average capillary pressure at the arterial end of the capillaries is 15 to 25 mmHg greater than at the venous end. Because of this difference, fluid filters out of the capillaries at their arterial end, but at their venous end, fluid is reabsorbed back into the capillary. So this is the normal procedure which takes place, because from the arteries we have to get oxygen, and from the tissues, the CO2 has to enter into the vessels, that is venous end. So that's why it is the filtration takes place at the arterial end and absorption takes place at the venous end of the capillaries. So forces tending to move fluid outward, that is capillary and negative interstitial free fluid pressure, interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure, we get total positive net filtration pressure. And these are outward and these are inward pressures. So net outward is 13 at the arterial end. And this is at the venous end, total inward force and total outward force, and net force is inward, that is 7. So reabsorption pressure is considerably less than the filtration pressure at the capillary arterial ends, but the venous capillaries are more numerous and more permeable than the arterial capillaries, so that less reabsorption pressure is required to cause inward movement of fluid. Okay, so at the capillary arterial end, what is happening? There is reabsorption pressure is less, but the venous capillaries are more numerous and more permeable. So there will be less reabsorption pressure required to cause the inward movement of fluid. So reabsorption pressure causes about 9/10 of the fluid that has filtered out of the arterial end of capillaries to be reabsorbed at venous end. Remaining 1/10 flows into the lymph vessel and returns again to the circulation. So nothing is wasted. Okay, and in other capillaries, the balance of Starling forces is different, and for example, fluid moves out of the almost entire length of capillaries in renal glomeruli. And on the other hand, fluid moves into the capillaries through almost the entire length in intestines. Thus, depending upon the balance of Starling forces and the filtration quotient, the capillary exchange in some important tissues is in renal glomerular capillaries, fluid moves out of the entire length, and in interstitial capillaries, fluid moves out of capillaries from arteriolar end up to middle part and then moves into the capillaries, that is in the venous side. In pulmonary capillaries, filtration does not occur at all. Okay. Remember these points which will come as MCQs or Viva questions. And now we will move on to the lymphatic circulation. So the lymph is formed as a transudate from the blood into the tissue spaces. That is, it is derived from the interstitial fluid. It is a transudate formed from the blood in the tissue spaces. Okay. And its composition is similar to plasma except that its protein content is usually lower than that of the plasma. So protein content in liver is 6 gram per deciliter, intestine and thoracic duct 4 gram per deciliter, skeletal muscle and skin 1.5 to 2 gram per deciliter, and in choroid plexus of brain no protein at all. The fat content of the lymph is the route of absorption of these long chain fatty acids and cholesterol is from the intestine in the form of chylomicrons. And after a fatty meal, the lymph looks like milk. So that's why it is called milky lymph or chyle. And the cellular content suspended in the lymph are the cells that are chiefly lymphocytes. Most of these lymphocytes are added to the lymph as it passes through the lymph nodes. Normal lymph flow is 2 to 4 liters per day, that is 80 to 150 ml per hour for the entire body. And this rate of lymph flow varies in different organs and is highest in GIT and the liver. In lymphatics, rate of lymph flow is 100 ml per hour through thoracic duct and about 20 ml per hour through other lymphatic channels. So this is the structure of lymph capillary. It is having flap valve and interstitial space. So these are the cells, lymphatic endothelial cells. So from the lymph capillaries, there will be lymphatic trunks formation occurs, and the lymphatic trunks will unite together to form the larger thoracic ducts. The morpho-functional properties of lymphatic system. This system has capillaries, vessels, valves and nodes. So in the nodes there is lymphopoiesis takes place and deposition of lymph occurs, whose function is filtration, and lymph flow in vein system occurs through the lymph ductus. So the functions of lymph are support of constant level of volume and components of tissue fluid, transport of nutritive substances from GIT to the venous system, and barrier filter function, and it takes place in immunological reactions. So this lymph cells, because it contains lymphocytes, they actively take part in immunity. So the lymphatic system has three primary functions. First of all, it returns excess fluid into the blood, and second is absorption of fats and fat soluble vitamins from the digestive system and subsequent transport to the venous circulation. And third and most probably well-known function is defense against invading microorganisms and diseases. The factors affecting of the lymph flow are intrinsic lymphatic pump and pumping by external compression of the lymphatics and negative intrathoracic pressure. So these will be affecting the lymph flow because the lymphatic pump which is present intrinsically helps in the flowing of the continuous flow of lymph into the thoracic ducts, and external compression also helps in lymph flow, and negative intrathoracic pressure, which is the pressure in the lung thoracic area, also helps in proper lymph flow. And suction effect of high velocity blood flow and interstitial fluid pressure, increase in capillary surface area, increase in capillary permeability, increase in functional activity of the tissue. All these will help in more lymph circulation into the thoracic ducts. So now we have seen the lymphatic circulation. We will see the applied aspect of the lymphatic circulation, which is called edema. Okay, so this is very important topic. So actually it is a clinical topic, but in physiology you have to know about this edema. So it is nothing but accumulation of fluid beneath the skin or in a body cavity. The palpable swelling produced by expansion of the interstitial fluid volume. So this is the definition of the edema. Accumulation of fluid beneath the skin or in a body cavity. Okay. So this edema is of two types, pitting and non-pitting. Pitting means, in the previous picture you have seen, when you press the skin, it should go or it should be depressed, that is pitting. And non-pitting is when you press, it will not be depressed. Most of the extra fluid that accumulates is free fluid because it pushes the brush pile of the proteoglycan filaments apart. Therefore, fluid can flow freely through the tissue spaces because it is not in gel form. When this occurs, the edema is said to be pitting because one can press thumb against the tissue area and push the fluid out of the area. Okay, so this is because the free fluid. And when the thumb is removed, a pit is left in skin for a few seconds until fluid flow back from the surrounding tissues. And whereas in non-pitting edema, which occurs when the tissues cells swell instead of the interstitium, or when the fluid in the interstitium becomes clotted with fibrinogen so that it cannot move freely within the tissue spaces. Okay, so this is the difference between pitting and non-pitting. In pitting, there is movement of free fluid. So when you press, the fluid moves apart. Whereas in non-pitting, the tissue cells swell. Here, in the space, the fluid is accumulating, but here the cells are becoming swollen. So that is one condition, and other condition is fluid in the interstitium becomes clotted with fibrinogen. So the fluid becomes clotted with fibrin, so it becomes very tough. So it will not be moving freely. So these are the causes for non-pitting edema. So now we will see different causes for the occurrence of edema. So first and most important is increased capillary hydrostatic pressure. So this is seen in excessive kidney retention of salt and water, like in acute or chronic kidney failure, mineralocorticoid excess, and high venous pressure and venous constriction seen in all these conditions, and decreased arteriolar resistance seen in this excessive body heat and insufficient sympathetic stimulation. And the second reason is decreased plasma proteins, where the proteins are lost in urine in nephrotic syndrome, and protein is shed from skin areas like burns and in wounds, and failure to produce protein in liver diseases. And other reason is increased capillary permeability seen in immune reactions that cause release of histamine and other immune products, and also toxins, bacterial infections, vitamin deficiency, prolonged ischemia and burns. There will be increased permeability in all these conditions. And the last reason is blockage of lymph return, which is seen in cancer, infections, and surgery and congenital absence of lymphatic vessels. So that is the end of the class. So we have seen today the microcirculation or the capillary circulation and also lymphatic circulation. So read this topic, which is very important, short question. Okay, so this will come as a short question, and also there are many Viva questions and MCQs present in this topic. So read from the textbook and write down a simple assignment in your notebook and send to me. So thank you all.